I was determined that when I got out of high school, I was going to get into aviation. So at 17, I was in the reserves, and then when I turned 18, I graduated from high school and went into active duty in February of 1945. I became a mechanic because the aviation programs were all shut down after the war ended. Went to school in Washington, D.C., and got my MP mechanics license, and I got my commercial pilot's license. And I got a job with a company out in Cleveland. They were advertising for a co-pilot mechanic. I got a job flying in Washington after 5.5 years. My boss had a farm near Warrenton. I flew out there with a helicopter and picked him up. I was taking him into Washington. There was a construction project going on at Manassas. And being in the real estate business, he was very interested in that sort of thing. And he said, "What's that construction project?" And I said, "That's the new Manassas airport." But a few days later, he called me in his office. He said, "Who's going to run the airport at Manassas?" I said, "Frank Marshall, he runs the old airport." And he said, "I think we ought to try to buy him out." He said, "Manassas is really going to boom." To make a long story short, he bought the lease, he bought the company. About a year and a half later, I got a call one morning from my sister-in-law. And she said, "Hey, you know your boss is in trouble. Have you seen the front page of the Post?" So I went out and got the Post, and sure enough, he was having some financial problems. A few days later, my boss called me up and asked me to come in to see him. So I went in and he said, "Why don't you buy the company out of receivership?" I said, "How much do you want for it?" He said, $100,000. I said, "I got $1,500. That's all you need." And the next morning I got up about 6:30, I started making phone calls. And within 40 minutes, I had $40,000. So we set up a meeting with the airport board, and finally they said, "Well, what are you going to call this new company?" And I said, "We're going to call it Old Dominion Aviation after the Old Dominion state of Virginia." I really thought they'd get it right here. And they started laughing. "We will go along with you if you will do one thing. The company must be called Colgan. It has to have the name Colgan on the hangar." I said, "Why?" They said, "If you put your name on the building, you'll protect this company." That's what we did. Then in 1969, IBM came to Manassas, and IBM wanted airline service and approached me about providing it. And I said, "Well, all I got is an Aztec, Piper Aztec." So we flew the Aztec on scheduled service for a little bit. We flew one round trip in the morning, one round trip at night, 5 days a week. And with IBM, we expanded up to about 12 airplanes, and we had pretty close to 100 employees. Then I sold it to Presidential Airlines. And I learned a lesson from that. Never sell your dream. My dream always was to move to the other side of the airport to build a new hangar. And I was going to have 6 or 8 airplanes like I already had, but they'd all be new ones. And I would really build my airline from that side of the airport. And that dream disappeared. Presidential Airlines got into trouble financially, and it gave me the opportunity then to take back some of what we'd sold them. And we started a new company. We had one Beech 1900. Over the next 16 years, the airplane grew in numbers. We had contracts with United Airlines, US Airways, and Continental, and operated into 14 states. When I came to Manassas in 1964, we had the airport here, and I noticed that no one really knew where it was or much about it. So I joined the Chamber of Commerce. And as my term came to a close, someone suggested that I run for the county board. People stopped and said, "Why don't you run? Why don't you run?" So I ran for the board supervisor. Governor Linwood Holton appointed me to an aviation study group. At that time, airplanes were paying the same taxes on aviation fuel automobiles were paying. You could get that money back, but you had to make applications for it and go through a lot of red tape to get it back. We set it up so that for the first 100,000 gallons you used, you pay the full price. After you hit 100,000 gallons, it would drop down to half a cent. And that was a great boom for aviation. 4 years later, I ran for the state senate and was elected. I introduced legislation which would protect airport boundaries. Many airport boundaries are being infringed upon by development. We gave the local governments the authority to protect those boundaries. Well, you know, if you look back at some things you'd probably do different. I just made up my mind that I'm going to work hard and I'm going to do everything I can. And I think I succeeded in that pretty much. It's a great life, really.